Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Since I've started making my own dog food, I've gotten a lot of questions from friends, and quite a few people have asked me how I do it, what I put in it, and if there's any downsides to it. So I'm going to make a brief video today. We're going to go over some of the basics that I do with prepping the dog food that I make. I've got two German Shepherds. They're both about 90 pounds, and so I make mine according to that dog size. But I've talked to the vet that we use. I've done some research. I've read a few books. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to be a dog expert in any way, but this is what I do for my dogs, and it's worked well. The dogs love it. I found some benefits from it that I didn't even realize when I first started doing it that were going to be there. And one of the benefits is with a large breed dog, we have trouble getting them to take the glucosamine tablets. And the alternative was to buy the real expensive chewable ones from the vet's office, and it just wasn't cost effective. And what I found when I started making my own dog food is you can pretty much put all kinds of stuff in the food and they'll eat it. They love everything else that's in it so much they'll eat it with no problem. And I've actually got a coffee and spice grinder for like $12 off Amazon.com, and I actually grind up the tablets and I just mix them in when I cook my food, and you'll see that as we progress through this video. I'm going to show you the ingredients I use and the process I use to make the dog food, some of the equipment that I have, and hopefully it'll at least give you a starting point on what you want to do for your dogs. So hang on. So here's basically a list of ingredients that I use to make my dog food. I do not always use the fresh salmon that just happened to be on sale at Kroger's today when I went to the store, and I probably won't use all of these carrots in the mix. But what I did learn when I first decided I was going to make my own dog food, I thought it was going to be fairly simple. Just go to the store, buy some chicken and some rice, and it would be a fairly simple process, and that anything I cooked would be healthier than what the dog food bag had. Once I started doing some research, I learned that while 80% of the stuff in that bag of dog food might be cardboard, volcanic ash, or whatever fillers they're using, most of the reputable dog food companies actually do put a good amount of nutrients in there, vitamins and minerals and stuff that the dogs need that they may not get if you're cooking dog food at home. So at first I decided I was going to rotate their diet, make it different all the time. That way they would get a mix. And I quickly learned that no matter how much I rotated it, there's going to be things they're not going to get that they would get in the dog food. So when I make my dog food, I added a few items. We also buy a high-end bagged dog food, and we put a little bit of that in there, maybe 15% of the food in their bowl is this, I believe my wife gets Ultra, is the name of the dog food. We put about 15% in there, so they're still getting some of that vitamins and nutrients that are in the dog food. Additionally, I add a vitamin that I grind up in my coffee grinder and just mix in when I'm cooking the food. So just to go over a few of the items that I add into mine, I do the ground flaxseed. I put a little bit of that in. Obviously, we just talked about it. I've got the vitamins, and I've also got the glucosamine tablets. Just whatever the fish is of the day in the frozen food section. I like these little frozen packets. I can put them in the freezer and just put one in with the food. I try to put some form of beef. I just look for what's on sale in with the batch of dog food. I make 1 week supply typically, maybe a little more than a week at a time. The carrots, oats. I actually boil the oats in apple juice. I've got a little bit of wheat germ here. Sweet potatoes, they love these. I've got organic strawberries, whole strawberries. I've got mango chunks, blueberries, like we talked about, from the meat market, I got the seafood market, I got the fresh salmon. And then the chicken breast, I always use the chicken breast, obviously with no bones. We've got spinach, eggs, frozen green beans, frozen peas and carrots, bell peppers, black-eyed peas, kidney beans, and chicken broth. One thing I would note when I first started doing this too is look at the bags, because a lot of these frozen bags of different things that you buy actually have a lot of salt and all kinds of extra things that aren't necessarily going to be digested well by your dog. So everything that I've got here in the ingredients, it's pretty much just green beans and water, or whatever the flavor may be in there. There's not artificial stuff in there. This whole batch of food will cost me less than we're paying for the decent brands of bag dog food for 2 German Shepherds. I'll show you a better recipe I'll post when I put this video online. I'll actually have a ballpark recipe of how much I put of each thing, and I'll show you the process for cooking, because another thing that I discovered when I first started doing this is it was taking me forever to cook all this stuff. I was separating pots and cleaning pots, and then I quickly figured out, who cares? At the end of the day, it's all going into one big bowl, and it's getting put in individual containers to be put in the refrigerator and the freezer. So I've got a pretty good process down packed. I've got some equipment I bought, fairly cheap stuff from Amazon for cooking the rice. And it pretty much all cooks at once for the most part. And I'll show you that here upcoming next. So the first batch of dog food that I made, when I cooked the rice in a big giant pot, what I found was it stuck together. It almost turned into a gluey, kind of a messy rice to work with. And then it got even worse when I started packing it into individual containers to put into the refrigerator and the freezer. So I looked around, I read some reviews, and I got this 20-cup Aroma brand rice cooker on Amazon.com, although I did find it at the local H-E-B for the same price as on Amazon. And one thing I would note is they tell you it's a 20-cup rice cooker, but in reality the cup that they use as a reference is about 3/4 of a real cup, so you're not quite getting 20 cups. I've never needed more than 6 or 7. So right now I've got 7 cups, about 7 cups, just a bag of brown rice, 2-pound bag of brown rice, 7 of their little magic cups. And what I do is, this is a pretty easy deal to work with. I use the organic chicken broth. You can use whatever you want. I don't use it all. There's probably about less than a half a container left in this container. And when I get done, I'm just going to use water for the rest. And then it's a really easy rice cooker to use. What I noticed when I started using it was that the rice really came out, it just falls apart. It makes a huge difference in what I'm doing. And all I have to do is close the lid, turn it on, and tell it that I'm cooking brown rice, and that's it. And it actually takes care of the rest. So I can leave this alone and go back to cooking the other things that I need to cook, and I don't have to stir it, I don't have to fool with it. When it's done, it lets me know, and it actually keeps the rice warm. Not that I care about that for the dog food, but it does keep the rice warm when it's done cooking. So I'm happy with it so far. It's done a good job for me. So one of the benefits that I've found from doing the homemade dog food is the ability to put their vitamins and everything and just grind them up and mix them in as I'm cooking the food. And I went on Amazon.com and I bought this Epica brand. It's just a little coffee and spice grinder, and all I use it for is making my dog food mix. And it's really simple. I've already pre-mixed. I've already taken out 7-day supply worth of vitamins, as well as the Desiquin brand is what I use for the glucosamine. And I've already got them in here. You can see they're whole tablets. There's the vitamins, and then there's the glucosamine. And they're pretty big, chunky things there. And I just put them in the top. And it's really pretty simple. It'll normally be one or two that won't be completely ground up, but other than that, I just push the button. It's just like a little small blender. It chops them up. And it makes a powder type mix. Just take this piece off, and if you can see, for the most part, there's one or two still in there, but for the most part, it's a powdered mix. Works out real good, and when I get done, I'll just pick out the one or two little tablets that didn't completely grind up, and then I'll just pour that in the mix with the broth when I'm cooking the chicken breast, and it'll just mix right in, and I'll mix it up, or I'll just pour it in as I do the rice mix. So this is a new container of chicken broth. You can use water, you can use whatever you want. I'm sure from a cost standpoint it would be much cheaper for me to just use water, and I'm sure the dogs would like the food just as well, so it's just a preference if you want to do it. And then I take the chicken breast. I get any kind of chicken meat that doesn't have bones in it. Sometimes the tenders are less expensive. I'm just trying to get the chicken meat in there. And so what I will do is I'll put the chicken breast in there, and then I'll let them get started cooking, and I've got a lid that just kind of lays right on top of the breast. Works better for me to cook faster. So while the chicken breasts are cooking, I've got the sweet potatoes in the microwave oven, and they're actually cooking while we're doing this. The rice is behind us cooking. You can't see in YouTube land, but there are two very impatient German Shepherds that are stalking me in the kitchen. As soon as I opened up the pack of salmon and laid it on the counter, they know that fish. They love salmon. So while the chicken breasts are cooking, I'm just going to take the salmon and I'm just going to put it in. I've already got a little bit of chicken broth in there. And basically, so what we're going to have going on is we're going to have the chicken breast cooking, the fish are cooking, the rice is behind me cooking, the sweet potatoes are in the microwave cooking, and then I'm barely, when it gets down to the beef, I'm barely going to cook this. I'm just going to get this to where it's not like solid red on the outside. The chicken is the only one that I cook pretty good, just to make sure it's easier for me to cut up. But most of this is all going on at the same time, and it takes, this process right here will take about 20 minutes, and then I'll pull the chicken breast out and I'll cut them up on my chopping board, and then I'll start mixing vegetables. The only other thing I would tell you is on the kidney beans that were in the can, I do rinse them real good. I've got this little strainer and I rinse them real good. A lot of times they'll have all kinds of additives in them, so there's no reason to put all that in your dog's food. And all this is going on at the same time. There's really not much follow-up to do. There's a couple little things, cutting the bags open with the bag veggies. I found the bag veggies cost about $1 a bag. They're all kind of already pre-sized. It's just easy for me to cut the top off when the rice is done, and I'll start mixing things in with the rice. When we get to that point, we'll cover that also. So this is the final mix. This is the food that actually has to be chopped up or broken down a little more. I've got to break down the yams or the sweet potatoes. Those are the chicken breast. The beef actually came out that way. I bought the Carnita beef, and that's our vitamin mix. Those are 4 raw eggs, and I'll be stirring them in right here in the pan that the beef just came out of. And we have our oats that are soaking up all the apple juice. They're almost ready. And then we've actually got a blue dish over there that actually has the salmon actually in it. So our rice is done, and other than throwing in the frozen packs of vegetables, we're pretty much done in our food prep today. So when it's done, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. And then I just scoop it up into about 1.5 to 2 cup each plastic containers. They can go in the refrigerator and the freezer. And we split it between our dogs once in the morning and once in the evening.